Happy Wednesday, folks, and welcome to episode 428 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. One quick cheap plug here. We got an interview up right now with the WWE Champion, Bobby Lashley. Went up in video form and in article form on Monday here on the channel and on Bleacher Report. The video was great. We've spoken to Bobby twice before. I don't think I published the first interview. We did it back in September of 2020. The second one is definitely up here on the channel. That one I put up. That one we did in February of 2021, right before, I think it was like the day that he won the WWE Championship. But it was like earlier in the day. We spoke to him like a couple days earlier, whatever. The article went up the day, I think, that he became WWE Champion. But yeah, that was great. So I got a chance to catch up with them last week, and the interview went up on Monday, and he was awesome. So we spoke a lot about Brock Lesnar, Elimination Chamber, getting back the WWE Championship, and a lot more. So if you enjoy Bobby Lashley, if you enjoy my interviews, you're probably going to enjoy that conversation. So if you haven't already checked it out, please do so. It's right here on the channel in video form, and also in article form over on Bleacher Report for the highlights. So let's get right into it here. First question comes from Joe M. on YouTube. Their first question was, if Bobby Lashley, speaking of whom actually, speaking the devil, if Bobby Lashley loses the WWE title at Elimination Chamber, what do you think he'll be doing at WrestleMania? That's the money question and why I don't like the idea of Brock Lesnar being in the chamber. Because if Brock's in the chamber, and he is, unless he's taken out on Monday's Raw, which I would be very surprised if they did that, he's fucking winning. He's winning the whole thing and becoming WWE Champion. So what does that mean for Bobby? I assume it comes down to Bobby and Brock. So Brock can get his win back over Bobby. He can end his championship reign, get the belt back. I guess it's better than Brock winning at the Rumble, beating Bobby there, and then going... I mean, we know at this point it's very likely. I don't know how they get out of doing this, and I don't like the idea, but it's very likely they're going to do a winner-take-all match with Roman and Brock at WrestleMania. Maybe not necessarily a unification match, but all signs point to them doing a winner-take-all match for both belts. Again, I guess it was better than Brock, like I said, beating Bobby at the Rumble and then holding on to that championship until WrestleMania. I guess another reign of, as WWE champion for Bobby is better than nothing, but still, I don't love the idea of him having a 3-week reign and then going on to do what at WrestleMania? I mean, at one point before he became number one contender for the WWE championship, before, going into day one, it certainly looked like they were teasing tension between him and MVP, which I fucking hated. I thought that was stupid. They haven't gone back to it since, and I'm glad that they haven't. I'm hoping it was just a red herring. That wasn't the actual plan they were going with or will go with going into WrestleMania. I think breaking up Lashley and MVP would be dumb. If you make Lashley a babyface, like a full-on, full-fledged babyface, and you keep MVP heel, maybe, if that was their reason for breaking them up. But then again, what do you do with MVP to keep him on the show? And what do you do with Bobby Lashley? I feel like it would just be better off if you keep them together. I was thinking, and I absolutely hate this idea. We haven't seen Omos on the show in a couple of weeks. He wasn't even in an Elimination Chamber qualifier, thank the fucking Lord. But I had this fear going into the Rumble that, probably not for the championship, obviously, but we could get MVP turning on Bobby and joining Omos, who can't speak for shit, unfortunately. He seems like a really nice guy. We had a back and forth on Twitter last summer because I saw him on a flight that I was on, going to SummerSlam, actually. And I didn't say hi, and I should have, and he was a really cool guy about it on Twitter. He seems like a really nice guy. In the ring, he's abysmal, and on the mic, it's just almost impossible to understand the guy. So I can see why they would put MVP with Omos, but he's just not that good in the ring, and he's not honestly worth having MVP as a manager. MVP would be better suited with Bobby Lashley or someone of that caliber. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to see MVP wasted on a guy like Omos, who just doesn't really have, in my opinion, a lot of upside, aside from the fact that he's super fucking tall. So I feared at one point that we might get Lashley and Omos. I really hope I don't think it is. I really hope that's the direction they don't go in. I really hope that's the direction they don't go. That's not the direction they're going in with Bobby Lashley. But if it isn't that, and it looked like maybe they might do Omos and Damian Priest for the championship, because Omos did eliminate Priest from the Royal Rumble, remember? That was completely forgotten about. I don't think we've seen Omos on Raw since. So again, what was the point of that? I don't know. I mean, I feel like if you were to do Bobby in, for example, AJ Styles at WrestleMania, I mean, what's the bad blood there? Would Bobby eliminate AJ Styles? Or maybe AJ Styles eliminates Brock or Bobby Lashley from the Elimination Chamber, and then instead of it coming down to Bobby and Brock in the Chamber, it comes down to AJ Styles and Brock Lesnar. That's not a bad idea. And then Bobby gets all pissed, but before Brock beats AJ, Bobby beats the shit out of AJ Styles, and that's what causes AJ to lose, therefore allowing Brock Lesnar to become champion. I can see that, and maybe that's the WrestleMania match. I think it would be stronger if the WWE Championship was on the line, but if it's not, it's a fresh match we've never seen before. If not that, again, I don't know how you get from point A to point B, but Bobby Lashley and Edge. Edge, to me, has got two very likely Mania matches they can go in with him, that they could do with him at WrestleMania this year. Him and Bobby Lashley. Again, how you get from point A to point B, I don't know. Either him and Bobby Lashley or him and AJ Styles. The AJ Styles match at this point, to me, became a little less likely after he turned babyface. It seems like he's been babyface since the Omos split back in late December. How you set up that match with both guys, unless Edge goes heel, which I wouldn't do. I mean, that guy's super over right now. Why would you do that? I mean, I guess I did the same thing with Edge going into WrestleMania last year. That kind of turned him heel a little bit. You could do that. I wouldn't necessarily do that. But either way, AJ and Edge or Lashley and Edge are two marquee matches. We spoke about Edge's WrestleMania matches last week. But as far as Lashley goes, like, him and Priest would be a fresh match. We got it for all of like a fucking minute, I think, on Raw, the Raw after SummerSlam last year. Would it be for the United States Championship? I've been there, done that with Lashley. You know, he's already a two-time champion. He shouldn't be fighting for that title at WrestleMania. I know Sheamus did after he fell short of becoming WWE champion on the road to WrestleMania last year. Now, he went on to win the United States Championship at WrestleMania as like a consolation prize of sorts. I just feel like Lashley's bigger than that. At this point, they've kind of solidified him as honestly, probably the biggest star on that show outside of Seth Rollins. Kevin Owens is up there too, but Bobby Lashley had a far better and far more dominant reign as world champion than Kevin Owens ever did. And I hate to say it, but it's true. And I love Bobby Lashley, but Kevin Owens really deserves better when he was Universal Champion about 5-6 years ago. So anyway, Bobby and Edge is an option. Bobby and AJ, if you really set it up right in the chamber. Beyond that, I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't want to see Bobby and MVP going for the fucking tag titles or something. I feel like he's above that. You know, Randy Orton going for the tag titles with Riddle because they're just so over, or facing each other would be fine. I feel like with Bobby and MVP, they're not like this top-tier tag team to the point where them versus, like, again, Alpha Academy or the Profits or something, it feels like a worthy use of Bobby Lashley. We've seen people riding high in the months preceding WrestleMania only to not have a WrestleMania match. That has happened time and time and time again. More than you would probably think. So I wouldn't be surprised if something similar happens to Bobby Lashley where they just don't have a match set up for him at WrestleMania. But I really hope that's not the case because he's done great work over the last year. He beat Drew McIntyre to retain the fucking WWE title at WrestleMania last year. Why wouldn't you put him in another marquee match at Mania? So again, I hope it's AJ. I hope it's Edge. I don't see him getting involved in the Roman and Brock shit at WrestleMania. I would be shocked if that was the case. Hey, Roman, Brock, and Bobby sounds amazing to me. We are not getting that. I feel like Rollins being involved in that triple threat because of how their Royal Rumble match ended is more likely. But I think that'd be another awesome use of Bobby Lashley if they indeed went in that direction, which they're not. But I don't know. It's really a mystery right now. We'll talk about the road to WrestleMania and them kind of confirming matches at the last minute a little bit later on because someone else asked about that. Joe's second question, was Sheamus winning the Royal Rumble in 2012 over Chris Jericho the right decision? You know, at the time, as a 16-year-old 10 years ago, I was fucking pissed. I think I was a junior in high school. I was so upset. I've always been the biggest Chris Jericho fan. I really wanted to see him win the Rumble. But in retrospect, and even a couple months removed from the Rumble, I could probably tell you, having Sheamus win was the right call. The only issue with Jericho not winning, I mean, Sheamus was the fresher face. He went on to win the World Championship at WrestleMania, so it wasn't like it was a waste of a Rumble win. Sheamus was gaining momentum as a babyface at that point. He was over. Unless he was going to win a number one contenders match to earn a World Heavyweight title opportunity at WrestleMania, it made more sense for him to win the Rumble than Jericho. Jericho, him and Punk was already set in stone for WrestleMania. We knew that from the moment he came back on that first Raw of 2012. The Punk and Jericho match already wrote itself. Jericho honestly did nothing to earn a championship opportunity. He fell short in the Rumble. He had a WWE title shot inside the chamber with Punk the following month. Everyone thought he would win that, and he didn't. And they were in the midst of that long reign with Punk, and it had really just kind of getting started at that point. I think it would have made more sense in retrospect to have Jericho not win the Rumble, but find a way to cheat and win the Elimination Chamber, and then have Punk beat him for the championship at WrestleMania. I feel like that feud, as great as it was back in 2012, would have been that much stronger with Punk in chase mode for at least a little bit. Because they had, remember, at least 2 or 3 matches at that point, including Elimination Chamber. Punk was champion at that entire time. He overcame the odds and won inside the chamber. He tapped out Jericho at WrestleMania, yet and they still did the feud anyway. They still resumed the rivalry coming out of WrestleMania and had Punk beat Jericho again. It really solidified Punk's main event status, at least, below Cena anyway at that point. But still, I thought they could have done a better job of kind of giving Chris Jericho credibility. I know Chris Jericho is Chris Jericho, but the feud would have been a little better had he been champion for at least a little bit. Maybe not necessarily win the championship in Mania. I wasn't a fan of that idea. But him winning the championship inside the chamber, or at any other point before Mania, only for Punk to get it back, would have been fine. It would have interrupted Punk's reign, but by that point he was only champion for like 3 or 4 months, so it wouldn't have really been that big of a deal. But anyway, back to your original question. Jericho didn't really have to win the Rumble. I was a big fan of Jericho winning because, again, it made sense because he was facing Punk in Mania, but they were setting up Sheamus and Bryan. That was fine. That ended up being, obviously, an 18-second match. But Sheamus was the younger guy. It was kind of the stamp of approval he needed to kind of get him over the top. And yeah, he was already a 2-time WWE champion by that point, but both of those reigns were not very good at all. He got the big shock win over John Cena at TLC 2009. But beyond that, though, he was never really the guy. Like, to me, honestly, before he had won the Rumble, and obviously he's kind of descended down the card since then, it's like an upper mid-card status. But before he won the Rumble and had that long reign as World Heavyweight Champion in 2012, he was in like the Kevin Owens territory where he was like upper mid-card, which I know is what he is now, but like a lot like Kevin Owens when he was Universal Champion, his first 2 WWE title reigns for Sheamus were just not very good. He was booked to look like a cowardly heel. He lost the championship within a couple of months. Owens had a lengthy reign as champion, but again, he was never really positioned as a threat, ever, at any point during his reign. He lost a lot more than he won, I felt, and it just wasn't a great reign. Sheamus, same thing. He was constantly overshadowed by Randy Orton or the Nexus or this or that. He was never really positioned strong as a world champion on Raw. And when he won the World Heavyweight Championship in 2012, he became a top-tier babyface over on the SmackDown brand. He was over. People didn't really like him coming out of WrestleMania 28, obviously, because the whole 18-second bullshit, which wasn't his fault. And he wasn't the most interesting babyface, but he had great matches. He was booked strong. He was very much protected. That finish specifically, the bro kick, was probably one of and still is one of the most protected finishers in this company. So him winning the Rumble that year just, to me, made sense in retrospect, and it set him up for a very successful 2012. No L from Facebook, their first question was, do you think it should be either Adam Cole or Kenny Omega dethroning Adam Page for the AEW World Championship? I don't know why it would be Omega. I wouldn't take the belt off of Page and put it right back on Omega. I think that'd be dumb. Omega can become champ. I'm not saying Omega should never become a 2-time AEW World Champion, but I think to have him come back and then avenge the loss to Page, essentially winning the rubber match, because they've had 2 matches in AEW. Omega won the first one at Full Gear 2020. Page won the second one, obviously, at Full Gear 2021. To go back to it, either at Full Gear this year or before then, and I think Adam Page is absolutely losing the championship before Full Gear this year. I don't think he's getting a year-long reign as champion, especially at the rate that he's going. He has not really been positioned well as the focal point of Dynamite. He hasn't been booked poorly as champion. It's not like he's out there losing, like the aforementioned people, like Sheamus and Owens and people like that. But he's barely on the fucking show. The Lance Archer feud honestly feels like an upper mid-card feud at best. And I'm sure the match tonight will be great. And I'm sure Adam Cole is next in line for a championship opportunity. But I just, I don't know. I'm not really feeling Adam Page right now as world champion. Not that he shouldn't be world champion. He absolutely should be. But he has absolutely cooled off, undoubtedly cooled off, since he won the championship 3 or 4 months ago. Because they barely have the guy on the show. He's not really doing anything of importance. The Bryan feud was great. They had a couple of awesome matches on Dynamite, but he has not been the focal point since then. Cody Rhodes, MJF, Punk, even fucking Chris Jericho. Brandy Rhodes feels like she gets more television time than Adam Page at this point. Dan Lambert, God forbid. The guy's all over the fucking show. And he's not even a wrestler. You know what I mean? So, of the two, neither. Just because I think it should be MJF taking that championship from Page. I would say a double or nothing, because MJF is so, maybe not the hottest he's ever been right now, but honestly, he's coming off a win over Punk. He might be, honestly. He might be the hottest he's ever been right now, even though he's lost a few times. I know he lost to Jericho and Moxley at All Out 2 years in a row. But overall, though, he's had, he's been booked very well. He's been protected, hasn't lost a lot at all, has MJF. And I think the time to put the championship on him would be double or nothing in May over Memorial Day weekend. You could wait until All Out. I just don't really know what you do with Page until then. They have a couple of good heels, but what I think they're setting up with Cole's post-match promo last week on Rampage, after he quickly, and as he should have, beaten Evil Uno, he made it known that he wants the AEW World Championship. Now, I would do that match at Revolution. Cole is still technically undefeated. He lost to fucking Orange Cassidy, which I still think is beyond dumb. But he should get his title shot at Revolution and lose. Maybe Kenny Omega comes back, cost him the championship inadvertently. The Bucks cost him the championship inadvertently, or Red Dragon does, or whatever. Preferably the Bucks or Omega, because I feel like the match at Double or Nothing should either be Omega versus Cole, or all of Undisputed Era, sans Roderick Strong, of course, versus the Elites, Omega, and Young Bucks. So, of the two, neither. But if I had to choose one, Adam Cole. Kenny Omega already had his reign. He was champion for almost exactly 1 year. Cole's never been world champion in AEW. Maybe at some point he will be. I wouldn't have him be the one to beat Adam Page, though. I just feel like for all the great work that Cole has done in AEW so far, it's got to be MJF. He's been here longer. He has more heat. He's been booked better so far, at least recently. I got to go with MJF as the one to beat Adam Page for that championship. He just has to be. You can wait longer. The guy's young enough. He's going to be around forever, obviously. But I feel like, not that you're really risking anything, that he might cool off in a year from now, but like, you could have made the argument for MJF being champion 2 years ago when he faced Jon Moxley at All Out. And ultimately, they made the right choice by not putting the belt on him then, because I felt even then it was too soon. Now, with the whole Wardlow stuff going on, now is the right time to do that match. And I would do it, or to do the title change, and I would do it at Double or Nothing. Their second question, what match do you think can save this year's predictable WrestleMania match card so far? I mean, we only have 2 matches announced so far, but this is the problem. We'll get to this later, but I honestly really don't know, looking at my likely lineup for WrestleMania, what the card is even going to look like across the 2 shows, because between the 2 brands. Because if you look at the WWE title match, it's very likely going to be a winner-take-all match. I would love if they kept the WWE Championship match separate, and again, you do it Bobby and AJ, or Bobby and Edge, or AJ and Edge, or whatever. I don't think they're going to do that, though, is the problem. I don't know what they're doing with Rollins. It seems like they might be setting up Rollins and Owens, but it's like, we've seen that so many fucking times. Even with Owens as the heel. I know they'd had a WrestleMania match 2 years ago, albeit in front of no one. But they already had that Mania match. It was a great match, and I know Owens was the babyface, but they already feuded with Owens as the heel 6 years ago. I just feel like it's a feud that's been done to death. They've had a million matches. I don't want to see that at WrestleMania. And it's not like before anyone says, oh, it's Owens and Zayn. They had a million matches, and I was okay with that at WrestleMania last year because they deserved a WrestleMania match. Owens and Zayn, for the amount of matches they've had across all these companies, had never had a Mania match before. Owens and Rollins already did 2 years ago. So I don't really want to see that be the match. But if they were to do that, it would be a great match, I'm sure. You know, even Ronda and Charlotte, people poo-pooed all over that, which, listen, I think Becky and Ronda is the bigger match of the 2. I said that last week. It's a far bigger deal. They're not doing it. We all expected. As soon as Ronda said last week on Raw, I'm making my decision this Friday on SmackDown, we all knew she was choosing Charlotte. I mean, it was as clear as day that's where they were going with that, and they did. I don't think that's an awful match. I just think Becky and Ronda's a far bigger match. It's not like she had choices between, her 2 choices were Becky Lynch and fucking like Tamina or Aaliyah. You know what I mean? Like, it's Charlotte Flair, who is still great, one of the greatest they've ever had in this company. Say what you will about her booking or her character. This reign of hers has just been abysmal. I mean, she has barely defended the fucking title. I know she has a title match coming up on Friday's SmackDown, which she obviously isn't losing if she already has Ronda Rousey set for WrestleMania. I don't think we're getting Naomi and Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania 38. I guess they could have Naomi win and then lose it back to Charlotte. I wouldn't even do that, I don't think. Anyway, so I'm sure that's going to be a good match. Even Brock and Roman, they've had good matches before. I can't say I'm over the moon about that being the Mania match, but it makes sense given the story they've told since SummerSlam. I don't think it looks like a shit show. It's not like WrestleMania 30. WrestleMania 30, going into it before Punk left, and even after Punk left, before they put Bryan in the main event, the show looked like it was going to be Randy Orton and Batista. You talk about matches we've seen a million fucking times, and a match that would have been absolutely no good. Holy shit. I mean, at least with Owens and Rollins, you can expect a great match. Orton and Batista straight up one-on-one in that Mania main event at 30, had Bryan not gotten involved and not been added for the triple threat, would have been terrible. That would have been one of the all-time worst main events, at least in the last 10, 15 years. That would have been terrible. So I'm glad we didn't get that. But I just look at that card, for example. We were supposed to get Orton and Batista in the main event for the top championship. Punk and Triple H at one point. Again, a match we had seen before, but it made sense. I was actually all for that because we hadn't seen it with Punk as, with Triple H as a full-fledged heel, and it made sense. But we were also supposed to get on that show Bryan and Sheamus. And I'm like, again, bro, we've seen this already millions of times. Who fucking cares at this point? You know what I mean? I'm so beyond done with Bryan versus Sheamus. Especially at WrestleMania. We saw it on the dark match in 2011. It was the World Championship match in 2012. I didn't really want to see it in 2014. So I'm glad they didn't do it. They ended up shaking up the whole card. It ended up being a great WrestleMania. I don't look at this card's, what we have, what's looking likely for WrestleMania this year. It doesn't look like a shit show to me. But if you ask me what other matches could be added, like Orton and Riddle, I think could be a great mid-card match. They had a very good match on Raw with no fans. Like a week or two after WrestleMania last year. Very good match. I don't know if Orton turns heel before then or if it's babyface versus babyface. They could be involved in a tag team match at Mania, but I feel like the tag team match at Mania, the only one that would have made sense, they literally just did on Raw this week with RK Bro and Rollins and Owens. Like if you gave the belts back to RK Bro and they would have faced Rollins and Owens at Mania, that would have been a big deal, but we literally just got that on Raw this week. In like a 7-minute match, and it wasn't even advertised. It was an impromptu tag team match because Riddle and Rollins ended in a DQ because Owens got involved. So I would do Riddle and Orton one-on-one. I think that could be a really good match. That could be like WrestleMania 31 Orton versus Rollins levels. I mean, that was a great match, a great undercard match for Mania that year. I think Riddle versus Orton could be very similar to that. What else do you even do? Bianca and Becky, it looks like it's looking likely if Bianca wins the Chamber, and I think she will. I've heard rumblings of maybe Rhea Ripley being involved. Hey, if she is or isn't, I wouldn't put Rhea in there necessarily. I love Rhea, but I think the story is with Becky and Bianca personally. Either way, that would be a great match, either one-on-one or the triple threat. I don't even really know what other matches you do. We don't really have a good idea of what the Chamber or what the WrestleMania card is going to look like until after Elimination Chamber. It shouldn't be the case. And the only positive is that it's unpredictable. The problem is that I don't even think the company knows what they're going to do. I mean, if of all the plans, and they didn't have many plans set in stone for Mania by the Rumble, but if one of their top plans was to put Shane fucking McMahon in a top spot at Mania for a match with someone like Rollins, then this company is fucked. I mean, if that was like, of all the matches that we don't have confirmed, and that was like the one match that was looking likely that would have been prominently featured in one of the 2 nights of Mania, then we would have been in deep fucking trouble, and we still are, because they don't know what they're doing in place of Shane being at Mania. WrestleVotes was like, oh, they need another top act or whatever. I don't know who they can bring in on such short notice, and please do not say the fucking Undertaker. I would honestly prefer Shane over Taker at this point. Taker is so beyond done. I know they're in Texas. Put the guy in the Hall of Fame and move the fuck on. I mean, holy shit. If he were to come back for another match, I don't even know what to say. I don't know really who else you bring back, though. I'm sure Cena's busy. Rock's busy. Triple H almost fucking died last year. You're not going to put him in the ring anyway. Goldberg, they already have him in Saudi. What do you do with him at WrestleMania? I think Saudi is going to be his last match anyway, so I don't know, man. I don't really know what other matches can save the show. But even some of the more predictable Manias have ended up being some of the best. So, like the build to WrestleMania 31 wasn't really that good at all. It was kind of a fucking mess, but it ended up being one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. Same thing with WrestleMania 30. So, I wouldn't exactly judge a Mania on the build, but we've also had predictable builds, and bad WrestleManias. So, I mean, I guess we'll find out come Mania 38 where that show is going to fall on the spectrum. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, do you consider AJ Styles leaving TNA, now Impact Wrestling, to be the best move of his career. I mean, absolutely. I mean, had he not left TNA, had he re-signed for less money or whatever, he would have been toiling away there. Maybe they would have released him eventually. I don't think they would have. I think AJ Styles was a lifer in TNA. They would have never let him go, I don't think. I feel like he just would have been there forever. Like James Storm, he ended up leaving, but I felt like James Storm missed his window to go to WWE. That he had that opportunity, not that he would have been a WWE champion, but he had that NXT window in 2015, 2016 with NXT really getting hot. It was right before they brought in Bobby Roode. Him and Bobby Roode could have done something, who knows? They almost brought in James Storm to WWE a year or two ago before COVID, and then it fell apart, unfortunately. But yeah, with Roode and Storm, you could have done something. But with AJ though, I don't think, like I said, I don't think they would have ever released him. But I feel like he had already done everything he could have done in TNA by the time that he left in late 2013. He was already X Division champion, tag team champion, world champion many times over. He had other stars coming in. He was getting overshadowed for a time. He really got one of his best pushes towards the end there when he won the Bound for Glory series and he main evented Bound for Glory, beat Bully Ray for the championship in a great match. So he went out on a high note, and then he kind of took a bet on himself, took a chance on himself and his career, and went to New Japan and had some of the best matches ever over in New Japan. He had some amazing matches in TNA, but a lot of people would probably say, and I haven't seen every AJ Styles New Japan match, but I think a lot of people would say, even for the fact that he was only there for 2 years, he had his best matches ever in New Japan with people like Ibushi and Okada and Tanahashi and all these other people. Nakamura at Wrestle Kingdom right before he left for WWE. And then again, had he not left TNA, WWE, at the point where they were looking to hire people like him, like for example, had AJ stayed with TNA until now, for example, and he left TNA, would WWE have hired him? Probably not, because he would have been past his prime. They're not looking to hire indie people right now. Like I look at people in Impact that would have been cool in NXT a couple of years ago. Like someone like Moose, for example, doesn't exactly fall in that category because I think he'd be great in WWE now if they booked him properly, obviously. But he couldn't come in a couple of years ago because he wasn't ready yet. Like I feel like the Moose that we see now is ready for WWE. But, I mean, I guess they would have signed him a year ago. He was talking about that when his contract came up in 2021. Who knows where he would be now? He probably would have fucking moose antlers on his head in NXT 2.0, if not eventually released, and all the budget cuts and whatnot. But, yeah, I mean, look at Taya Valkyrie. She left Impact, and unfortunately, she came into WWE at the wrong time. Had she come in 2 or 3 years ago, she would have been perfect. But because she came into the tail end of NXT 1.0, so to speak, they had nothing for her in NXT 2.0. They weren't very high on her, and they let her go, and she had a very short run, and it's not her fault. The timing is just terrible. AJ came in at a time where WWE was hiring more indie guys, more high-profile indie guys than any other period in WWE history. Like, the talent they acquired from, like, I would say 2014, starting with the, they already had Rollins on the roster, and Daniel Bryan and CM Punk and people like that by 2014. But they really amped it up starting in 2014 with the signings of Kenta, who didn't amount to much, mind you, but, still he was a big signing at the time. Kenta, Balor, who's still there now, and Kevin Owens, who's obviously still there now and a bigger star than both of them. Balor is great, but they just don't see him as the star that Kevin Owens is for whatever reason. But yeah, then after that, they brought in a whole wealth of talent. I mean, you look at 2015 and the people they signed at that point, Apollo Crews, again, 2016 with the Good Brothers and AJ Styles, Adam Cole in 2017, Bobby Fish, just Red Dragon, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, so many people. Austin Aries was another one. Samoa Joe, for God's sakes, in 2015. I mean, they took more risks on the TNA indie guys, Ring of Honor guys, than at any other point in WWE history during that 4-year stretch, I would say, from 2014 through 2018. We got a few of them in 2019, like Kushida coming in. I would say he was the last real big outside WWE signing beyond Killer Cross and Timothy Thatcher, who they eventually released, obviously, as of a couple of months ago. AJ fit in that window perfectly, to the point where he completely bypassed NXT and has had an amazing career on the main roster. For all the people you can point to that WWE is completely fucked with their booking and that never really amounted to their full potential, even people like Asuka, I would say, people like Asuka and Owens, and for as many championships as they have won, for as successful as they have been, you cannot argue with me that they are on the level of a Rollins or a Charlotte or a Sasha or whatever. Asuka, for as great as she is, they do not see her as being one of the 4 horsewomen. She is not in that category. She's probably the biggest star outside of the 4 horsewomen, but they do not care about Asuka as much, and she doesn't feel as special as the other 4 women do. Bayley, Banks, Charlotte, and Becky. And same thing with someone like Owens. For as successful as he has been, he never really had that. He was never the guy the same way that AJ was for a time. And isn't now, unfortunately, but AJ for a long time, I mean, he had a year-long fucking WWE title reign. He was the man on SmackDown for 2 or 3 years. He successfully defended world championships at WrestleMania. You know, AJ's had a lot of success. And so is Owens, but I would put AJ in that category of people. He's like, what's the word? Like, not untouchable, but he's one of those guys that's like Tupperware proof or whatever. You know what I mean? Like where you can book him to be in stupid shit and he doesn't feel buried. He doesn't feel important right now, mind you, does AJ Styles. But still, I mean, he's one of those guys that's, he's almost bulletproof in a way with the booking. Owens, not so much. Other people like that, not so much. So AJ leaving TNA, going to WWE was the best thing that he could have done for his career. And going to New Japan as well. Because had he not, and had he stayed in TNA, I mean, he would have been there for the low points of TNA. Like, TNA went through some pretty rough times, rougher times than any other point in their existence. And I'm talking 2015, 2016, getting kicked off of Pop and Destination America and all these other channels. He wasn't there for any of that. He left at the perfect time when TNA was starting to go downhill. Like, right after AJ left, they got kicked off a Spike. So AJ left at, like, I don't want to say the peak of TNA. The peak of TNA to me was, like, either the mid-2000s or around 2012 when they were doing amazing work and they were live every Thursday and they had a lot of great positive buzz around them. That, to me, was, like, the creative peak of TNA. Business-wise, was probably in the late 2000s. You know, probably Monday Night War time. When I say Monday Night War, I mean when they moved to Mondays. So, yeah, he left at a perfect time and made the correct choice for his career. At Iwagu91, I'm spending a lot of time on these questions, by the way. I apologize. So I'll try to go a bit quicker with the upcoming questions. Did you notice MJF having a moment with CM Punk after defeating him last Wednesday on Dynamite? It reminded me of that moment with The Rock and Stone Cold that they shared after their final encounter at WrestleMania 19. No, I did not notice that. I noticed MJF doing the crisscross applesauce shit on Punk, the same way that... am I thinking of the beatdown? Am I thinking of the beatdown from the week before? I thought he did it both times, where he attacked Punk, laid him out, and then did the, Indian cross style, whatever you call it, sitting on top of Punk the same way that Punk sat on the stage when he cut the pipe bomb promo back in 2011. I think he did it both weeks. I noticed that. I wasn't paying attention when he spoke to him and had a moment with him. I didn't pick up on that. Maybe he did. If he did, I wasn't aware. If not, then not that big of a deal. But no, if so, that's interesting. His next question: did you know, had Roman Reigns been voted PWI Wrestler of the Year instead of Kenny Omega, that he, Seth Rollins, and Jon Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose, would have shared yet another achievement together? No, I did not know that. Had Roman Reigns become the Wrestler of the Year, because Rollins was the Wrestler of the Year at one point, as was Ambrose. It's honestly very surprising that Roman hasn't been, especially considering how, I think he should have been over Omega personally, but I get why they went with Omega for 2021. With Roman Reigns, it's weird with how fucking kayfabe PWI is, and they were a lot more kayfabe years ago, but their rankings are largely not really based off of opinion. It's largely based off of win-loss records and booking and stuff like that. Whoever wins the most is kind of like the Wrestler of the Year for the most part. Omega is booked very well, obviously, but, Roman Reigns, for a majority of his matches, has won more matches than probably anyone else in WWE in the last 5 to 10 years. And he's never been the Wrestler of the Year. I mean, that's very surprising to me. So, anyway, his last question here: do you see Eddie Kingston becoming AEW World Champion in the future? I don't. I think he would be better suited at like a TNT title level. I think him winning the World Championship, if you really played up the story, and I know he went for the championship twice in 2020. That was a different story because he was a heel at the time. He is so much more beloved and now as a babyface than he was at that point. I think it could work. The problem is that if you look at like the layout of the World Championship picture, and they can always deviate from it if they want to. The thing is, though, Eddie Kingston is great. He doesn't feel to me as a guy that you can put the champ. I mean, If you were to put the belt on him, he would, to me, would be a guy that you take the belt right off of him right after he wins it. Because with Kingston, it's more about the chase. He's not going to go in there and have 5-star match. I mean, not that Adam Page is the greatest wrestler in the company, but the guy was really over, and I feel like Adam Page can have a better match than Eddie Kingston can, given the right opponent. Kingston has had some amazing matches. Don't get me wrong. But I just feel like him in the champion role doesn't work as well as it would with him chasing. So I feel like if you were to put the belt on him, he would have to immediately lose it, either within a month or two or at the next pay-per-view. He's not a guy you put the championship on for more than a couple of months. He's not like a long-term world champion. But again, back to what I was saying, though, you look at the layout of who the next couple of champions could be. I said MJF. I would not have Eddie Kingston be the one to beat MJF. I mean, I guess you could. They have that New York connection. I don't think they've had a match so far, a one-on-one match yet in AEW. That's a story you could tell, but again, I look at the layout of the roster. I would rather see before Kingston, I would rather see Darby Allin as world champion. I would rather see CM Punk as world champion. I would rather see Bryan Danielson as world champion. Jungle Boy, Sammy, not quite yet. I think Eddie Kingston would be ready more for that spot than those two would be, although they've exhibited that they're stars on the rise. I don't know. I'm not going to say that Kingston won't become world champion. It's not like, I would never see, for example, Anthony Bowens becoming a world champion in AEW. That I can tell you for a fact will never, ever happen. Or someone like a Paul White, or I don't even know. I mean, AEW is such a roster, such a deep roster. Like Alan Five Angels will absolutely guaranteed, I bet my whole life on it, will never be a world champion in AEW. Kingston, I wouldn't say that about. There's a chance. I just don't see it happening. He's on the older side. There's other people that should get a run before him. And he doesn't feel like someone that would be a great champion anyway. It would be a great chase. And you could say the same thing about Adam Page. The chase was far better than his title run has been so far. But if the booking was better, I'm sure Page could have had could be in the midst of a great reign right now, creatively, and as far as matches go and stuff like that. We just haven't really seen him in the ring a lot. He hasn't really been on TV a lot. He, to me, feels more like a champion than Eddie Kingston does. Just my opinion. I like Eddie Kingston a lot. It could happen. I don't necessarily see it happening, though. At Reborn again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine. Check out his YouTube stuff as well at Real Honesty with John Ritland on YouTube. I always plug it. It's great stuff. John's first question. With the Alexa vignettes going on in less than 2 months to go until WrestleMania, how will she fit into the plans for the 2-night event? Or will she even get a marquee match at WrestleMania? So talking about Alexa Bliss here. Oh, man. The thing with Alexa Bliss, the vignettes started out poorly. This week's wasn't awful. So I had read a couple days ago, like a week or two ago, that they filmed 9 fucking vignettes. Now, the thing with that is, I think they filmed, or rather aired 2 vignettes with her on Monday. Does that count as one because they aired on the same show? Like, did they break it up into 2 segments? Or were those 2 separate segments they filmed, and now we're down to 5 left instead of 6 or whatever? You know what I mean? So I don't know when it's going to run out. Even if it was 9 weeks in a row, it would still end before WrestleMania. My expectation is that she's going to be back the week after Mania. Like, they've done this before. Well, they'll air vignettes in the weeks preceding WrestleMania for someone coming back, but they don't come back until the week after Mania. We saw it with Emma, who was then Emmalina, who then turned back into Emma right after WrestleMania. I think it was 33. By the way, just talked to her on Saturday, or rather Friday here on the channel. Tennille Dashwood from Impact. She was great. Also went up an article form over on dailyddt.com, so check that out when you get a chance. But yeah, they did it with her years ago. They did it with Sheamus, I remember. They aired vignettes for months, promoting the return of Sheamus to Raw. And it looked like he was going to come back right before Mania, but they held off on the vignettes and brought him back the night after WrestleMania instead in 2015. So I could see the same thing happening with Alexa. I mean, if you look at the current roster, we're probably getting Becky and Bianca at WrestleMania for the Raw Women's Championship. We are getting Ronda Rousey and Charlotte for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I don't know if they would do the Women's Battle Royal again. They'll probably have a tag team title match. I would assume that. Do you do Sasha in a one-on-one match? Probably not. It looks like they're still continuing the Naomi-Sonya stuff, even though Naomi beat Sonya clean on SmackDown. Not really sure why it's continuing. I could see that culminating at WrestleMania, with Naomi finally beating her and moving on or whatever. I could certainly see that happening. But yeah, I'm trying to think. That's a handful of women's matches right there. Tag team title match, the 2 title matches, and very likely Naomi versus Sonya or a surrogate or whatever. That's 4 matches. So I don't see them having 5 women's matches. It's possible. But even so, if they were to have a 5th match and it were to feature Alexa Bliss, who would you have her face? I mean, Rhea Ripley would be a fresh match. Is that a Mania-worthy match, though? I mean, it gets Rhea on the card, I guess, but I would rather they just bring her back after Mania. That's when they reset this whole shit anyway. Like, she got the Fiend disappeared after Mania last year, and she took over with the dumb female Fiend shit instead. So it would almost be fitting in a way if she were to re-debut as Little Miss Bliss or the Goddess or whatever after Mania this year. So that's what I would do. I don't even know what you would do as a marquee match for her. Would she be thrusted into the Raw Women's Championship show? I mean, no pun intended, but I know John Rentley, get your mind out of the gutter, my friend. I said thrusted. Would she be shoehorned into the Raw Women's Championship match at WrestleMania? I wouldn't do that. I certainly would not do that. So, I don't know. I would hold off on Alexa Bliss's return until after WrestleMania and then figure out something to do with her from there. I don't know if she would be a face or a heel. As long as she gets rid of the dumb female Fiend bullshit, then I'm content. His second question, fans have had the debate of who is Mr. WrestleMania, SummerSlam, etc., but who would you say is Mr. Elimination Chamber? Great question. No, one name comes to mind. A few do. If I gun to head, who would I say? Probably Triple H. He's won how many? 4, 5? At least 4. Probably 4. He won the SummerSlam 03 Chamber match. He won the Chamber in 04. Was it for the vacant championship, or was it for the World Heavyweight Championship? I know he won an Elimination Chamber match at like fucking New Year's Revolution or in January of 04. Maybe I'm making shit up here, but I'm pretty sure there was a New Year's Revolution show in 04. Or maybe it was 05. I'm thinking of 05. But wasn't there one in 04 too? I don't know. He definitely won a Chamber match in 05. He won that one at New Year's Revolution 05. He won the Elimination Chamber match in No Way Out 2008. I remember that. And he won one in 2009 in No Way Out to become WWE Champion. So that's at least 4. He may have won a 5th one somewhere along the way. That's a lot of Chamber matches, though. Jericho's been in the bunch. He's never won one, but he had a good showing. He was like the Kane of Elimination Chamber matches in that he got a lot of eliminations but never actually won the thing. You could say the same thing with him in Money in the Bank. Jericho is kind of the guy that gets a lot of eliminations in a lot of different matches, but never actually wins it, whether it be a Chamber, a Rumble, or Money in the Bank, or whatever. Jericho, to a lesser degree. Jericho wouldn't be who I would say, but he's like a very low, honorable mention. Triple H would be my top choice. Cena would come into a close second. Cena's had, again, also a lot of Chamber victories. I think he won his first Chamber at New Year's Revolution 06 to retain the WWE Championship. He won that one. He won... When did they do another one after that? I'm trying to think. I don't think they did any in 2007, I don't remember. He didn't win one in 08. 09, he walked in there as world champion and lost. He did win Elimination Chamber in 2010 to become WWE champion before losing the belt to Batista right afterward, like that same night, like minutes later. And he won another one in 2011 to become the number 1 contender for the WWE Championship going into WrestleMania 27. So he's won at least 3, maybe a 4th one along the way. Definitely at least 3, though. He comes into a close second. Taker's had some good showings in Elimination Chamber. He won one in 2008. He may have won another one in 2010. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Jericho did win one. What am I saying? Jericho did win the Chamber in 2010. He became World Heavyweight Champion. What am I saying? Jericho, I guess, would be up there. If he's won at least one, you got to win at least one. At least one. So I would say Triple H, then Cena, then Jericho. Beyond those people, I'm not really sure who else comes to mind. Orton has won at least one, I know. He won, he won that one in 2014 to retain the WWE Championship. I don't think he'd ever won a Chamber prior to that point. That was like the story, oh, you can't win, and then he did. I'm trying to think of who else. Daniel Bryan's had a couple of Elimination Chamber wins. He won in 2012, and he won in 2019 to retain his championship both times. And did he win one along the way as well? I don't think, like before then. I don't think so. They've done a lot of Elimination Chamber matches. Yeah, I would probably say my top 3 would be Triple H, then Cena, then Jericho, then Bryan. Any one of those names, but I would probably go with Triple H. No one name comes to mind, but Triple H has had some great success inside the chamber, especially early on, so that's why I would go with him. John's third question, so is it just me or has SmackDown been kind of in the dumpster for a while? I mean, to say the least, my friend, to say the least. I've been saying for months now, SmackDown has largely sucked since, like, the draft. When they lost people like Balor, when they lost people like Rollins and Edge, and a lot of their top stars, the show really fell off. And they gained Drew and Hardy in return. Hardy got fired. Drew got hurt, and he was only gone for a couple of weeks, but what they've had Drew doing is not great. Drew has done a whole lot of nothing since coming to SmackDown. He was winning random matches, which was fine, but then they put him in a fucking feud with Corbin and Moss, which is still going on and very likely will continue through WrestleMania. That is just awful. That feud sucks. I like Naomi and Sonya. It's dragged on for far too long, and they finally had a match a couple of weeks ago, but the feud is still going, so there's that. It's nice to have a secondary women's feud, I will say that, but they haven't exactly been overly creative with it, and they haven't exactly explained why Naomi is being targeted by Sonya in the first place, so that hasn't helped, but it's a nice storyline. Charlotte's reign as SmackDown Women's Champion has been so uninspiring. I mean, she had that feud with Toni Storm that sucked. The matches weren't as great as they could have been. Toni quit, so that was that. Sasha has largely been off of SmackDown in recent months. Another one like Drew, where she's a big star, they just don't know what to do with her. Shotzi's been barely on the show. Shayna's been barely on the show. Aaliyah and Natalya, I couldn't give two fucks about. Sheamus and Ridge Holland versus Cesaro and Ricochet wore out its welcome weeks ago. It's the same shit every fucking week. It's Rematch-a-mania every week on SmackDown. We're getting yet another Charlotte-Naomi match on Friday that Naomi is very likely going to lose. I mean, it's nice they have Ronda on the show now. Roman is great, but they don't have anyone for Roman to face because they haven't bothered to build anyone up. Nakamura's reign as Intercontinental Champion has been fucking terrible. I mean, the guy's defended the championship maybe once in like 6 months. That is terrible. That is terrible. I know he was hurt for a while, but before he got hurt in November, December, I mean, probably December because he was wrestling in November, he wasn't defending the damn thing anyway. He had no direction as Intercontinental Champion. He's over, but it's the same story as all of his other championship reigns, and that they've had him doing absolutely nothing. You could probably count on one, I'm not even kidding, you could probably count on one hand the amount of championship defenses he has had as Intercontinental Champion and United States Champion across the 4 reigns he has had in the last couple of years. His second reign as U.S. Champion was over in like 2 days, but his Intercontinental Championship reign and his U.S. title reign both lasted the first time like 6 months each, and he defended each title maybe once or twice. And he's defended this Intercontinental Championship once. I think against Apollo Crews back in September, right before the draft. Or maybe it was early October. Either way, they did the match at that point. He won, and that was it. And, it's been a rough show. They lost Bianca. They lost Becky. They lost a lot of their top stars. And the storylines aren't great. They've lost a lot of people. Again, Toni Storm quit. Jeff Hardy got fired. Hit Row got fired. People going down with injuries. Sasha got hurt. Ali wants to quit. I mean, they're losing a lot of their notable names, talent they can be using and stuff like that. It's just not a good show. It's easily the weakest show, even more so than NXT 2.0, which is, usually enjoyable at this point, which is good. SmackDown is easily the most consistently worst show of the 3, the weakest WWE brand right now of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. And the Roman Reigns stuff, again, is great, but it doesn't exactly make the show must-see. His stuff is must-see, but you can seek that out on YouTube or Twitter or social media, whatever. You don't have to watch a whole 2-episode hour of SmackDown in order to get to the Roman Reigns stuff. He's usually out in the opening segment, and that's it. We got Goldberg back again. Who gives a fuck? Who cares at this point? So, SmackDown needs some serious help. They need to press the reset button with the blue brand coming out of WrestleMania. Ideally before then, because this road to WrestleMania looks rough for SmackDown. I mean, looking at what they got on tap, Ronda and Charlotte should be a good match. The feud itself, I don't have a lot of confidence in, because Charlotte's character work lately has been terrible, and Ronda Rousey's mic skills are very questionable. She did better on SmackDown than she did on Raw, but still, I don't have a lot of hope that's going to be a great feud. Roman and Brock has been great. Been there, done that, but maybe it'll produce some strong segments going into WrestleMania. Who knows? what else even is there? Drew and Corbin, like I said, who cares? Naomi and Sonya's been fine, but again, dragged on for far too long. They don't have a lot of great, compelling tag teams. The Usos are great, but been there, done that with the New Day. I just don't give a shit about the New Day at this point. As a tag team, at least right now, Woods should be doing his own thing. Kofi should be doing his own thing. If you want to put Kofi as like Xavier Woods is like, again, his right-hand man type of thing, because they call him Sir Kofi Kingston, to the hand of the king, or whatever they fucking call him. If you want to make Kofi Xavier's like secondary, then they're not exactly equals, but if Woods wants to be if they want to have Woods be like the focal point, and then Kingston kind of I don't want to say sidekick. I feel like that's disrespectful and it's not even accurate. But if they want to have Woods be more of the focal point than Kofi, I'm cool with that. But Big E being back on the show, I like Big E, but what do you even do with Big E on SmackDown? He's already feuded with Corbin. He's already feuded to an extent with Roman Reigns. He's already feuded with I already said Corbin. He already feuded with Sheamus. What more do you do with the guy? He already won the Intercontinental Championship. He's like a million-time tag team champion. I would have rather they put AJ Styles on SmackDown. At least that way you could do AJ in a lot of fresh matches, him and Sheamus, him and Roman. Even him and Corbin. I mean, actually, him and Corbin is not exactly fresh. They did feud over the United States Championship 5 years ago. But still, I mean, there's fresher matches for AJ on SmackDown than there are on... I mean, there are some fresh matches for him on Raw. Quite a bit, actually. But I don't know, man. It's weird. SmackDown is just not a good show right now. It's not. And they need some serious help coming out of WrestleMania and going into WrestleMania. The SmackDown side of that Mania card is looking not good. And it's crazy, too, because the SmackDown side of SummerSlam, for example, was a lot better than Raw's. SmackDown going into SummerSlam had, like, Roman and Cena, Sasha and Bianca. And it ended up being changed to Becky and Bianca, obviously, but the build of Sasha and Bianca was great. Edge and Rollins was on SmackDown. Raw had fucking Goldberg and Bobby. What else did they even have? Drew and Jinder? Oh, my God. It was rough. Raw is not a great show by any means, but it's been a lot better and more tolerable lately than SmackDown by a long shot. It's not even close. At Supersonic X 1991, their first question. With the Elimination Chamber being 2 weeks away, who is the sixth woman in the Elimination Chamber match? Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Bayley, etc. I don't think it's Bayley. I don't think Bayley will be back before Mania. I feel like they'll hold off on her until after WrestleMania. She may not even be ready at this point. Alexa Bliss, maybe, but I just feel like the vignette stuff isn't over yet. They still have more vignettes to air. We have 1 week until the Chamber pay-per-view. If it was going to be her, they would explain why she would get the last spot. I feel like they know who the last spot is going to, but we're going to find out at the show. I feel like if it was Bliss, they would have just announced that. I think it will be Asuka. Asuka makes the most sense. We heard a couple of weeks ago, I think from Fightful, that she had a shoulder injury or something, and she was expected to be back in the month of February. Well, it's fucking February. Elimination Chamber's coming up next weekend, so I think it will be Asuka. I wouldn't have her win, mind you. We've already seen Becky and Asuka a bunch, but she should be in there, and I think it'd be a cool surprise. So I'm glad they're not just like, oh, Asuka's back. You know what I mean? Like, they're actually bringing her back with some fanfare. I don't know how big of a reaction it's going to get in Saudi Arabia, but I would have her be the last woman. I think that'd be cool. I don't know who else it would be. I mean, Tamina, Dana Brooke, give me a fucking break. It's got to be Asuka. The second question from Supersonic X 1991. Are wrestling fans getting tired of Tony Khan announcing the debuts every week on AEW? Can Tony Khan put this so-called forbidden door, quote-unquote, to rest and use some of the wrestlers he's got? I agree. I mean, listen, I'm looking forward to whoever this surprise is. I'm not getting my hopes up like super, super high just because I feel like we've done this before where he really hypes up this huge Hall of Fame wrestler and then it's Christian. And I love Christian. I love the guy. But him coming out at Revolution last year was a disappointment. It wasn't Punk yet, and it wasn't Brock Lesnar. It's Christian. I love Christian, but it just wasn't worth the hype they were giving it. And I feel like this is similar. He doesn't even know what the word fucking Forbidden Door means. Maybe I'll be wrong and someone from WWE shows up tonight or someone from another company. When I hear Forbidden Door, that to me tells me, and he's calling it a free agent too. So what does that even mean? How can it be the Forbidden Door if it's a free agent? To me, Forbidden Door means it's someone that works for another company like an Impact or New Japan, whatever, that's coming in to do a one-shot or be here for a storyline or whatever. Signing a contract as a free agent, I mean, if it's Juice Robinson, I give up. I like Juice, but that would just be incredibly underwhelming. Keith Lee is the top pick, And they're definitely doing this to build interest because the rating last week was disappointing, especially since it was headlined by MJF and Punk. MJF versus Punk for the first time ever. It got under 1 million viewers, and it should have been higher. So they're clearly doing this to get people excited for the show tonight, get them to tune in, which is smart. But then when if I don't want to say when, but if the surprise underwhelms, then people will lose faith in Tony Khan's surprise announcements, like they did with Dixie Carter years ago. She had an announcement every fucking week, and it was always terrible. Either there was no announcement, or it was like an announcement of an announcement that just wasn't very exciting. Like a major announcement, and then it wasn't anything major. You know? So we'll see. I don't think there's any Forbidden Door stuff at play here. I agree, though. I feel like regardless of whether he brings in more people or not, and he clearly is, he's got to do two things. One, get rid of some of the people on the roster that just serve no purpose. People like Peter Avalon, if they're going to be off of contract and not on TV, he wasn't really on TV anyway, but they got to clean house with people like him, Joey Janela, Marco Stunt hopefully is done there officially. Those people are just waste of roster spots. Fucking Luther. I watched Dark last night. Holy shit. That Serpentico versus Fuego del Sol match, as a match, was fine. It was almost unwatchable. Luther was screaming the entire fucking time. If you find that entertaining, more power to you. I mean, but that guy is just unbearable. So he's another one that's got to go. I guess he helps out behind the scenes. Good for him. I'm sure they have 1 million more people they can bring in or already have on their roster that would be more useful in that spot than him. Just keep him off the show. If they want to keep him backstage, let him go from his wrestler contract, hire him as a fucking producer or a trainer or an agent. I mean, the fact that fucking Luther is on Dark and Elevation and all this other shit. He was on the shows 2 times this week. He was on Elevation and Dark. Why? Why, dude? You have such a deep roster that you could be using right now. We haven't seen Brian Cage in months. Ricky Starks is barely wrestling. I know he made him at the Rampage last week, but we barely see the fucking guy. Oh my God. Give me less of Luther and more of the people that we barely see on these shows. More women's matches, more stuff like that. Please, I beg of you. But yeah, he's got to start using the roster that he has. I do not want to see him bring in anyone just for the fuck of it like WWE would, and they're not doing anything with them. I mean, that's what they did with Jay Lethal. They brought the guy in to do nothing. He's done nothing. He has not won a single televised match yet. He's won a bunch of meaningless matches on Dark, but on TV, he hasn't won shit. He lost to Sammy Guevara. He lost to Ricky Starks. He lost in that Dynamite dozen Battle Royal or whatever the fuck a couple months ago. He was tossed in a minute by fucking Matt Hardy, and that was never acknowledged again. I mean, it's just awful. So don't bring in people you don't have a plan in place for. It goes for WWE. It goes for any company. Why would you sign a notable name and then proceed to not do anything with them? I mean, it's been going on for years. WCW did that with Bret Hart. I get it. And it was inexcusable then as it is now. But, like, you would think Tony Khan would know this. You have such a deep roster. I know you want to sign these people up just because they have a lot of buzz and maybe prevent them from going to WWE. I don't know. But then do something with them. Have a plan for these people and not just bring them in for the fucking pop. Oh, it's so-and-so. And then not do anything with them. Danhausen is fine because the guy's not going to be a world champion. Him coming out and doing his poses and stuff, I think is perfectly fine. I think Danhausen is hilarious. Him coming out and being the corner man for people or doing some dumb segments on the show or whatever, I'm totally cool with. Because he's not going to get beyond a certain level as far as like winning championships and shit, at least on his own. So I'm okay with that. But then don't bring in people like Lee and then proceed to not do anything with them and then put them on Dark instead. That to me makes absolutely no sense. Their third question here, who should Io Shirai team up with in the Women's Dusty Classic? Well, we see Asuka teaming up with Io since they have a history as a tag team back in their days in Japan, something Asuka never won. I assume you mean a tag team title that she's never won, that being the NXT Women's Tag Team title, or the Dusty Classic or whatever. I mean, I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but no, I would love to see that. The issue is that I think you sent that in after NXT. I don't know. I watched NXT late last night. It was pretty clear to me that her partner is going to be Kaylee Ray. Now, they didn't outwardly say that. I don't think they've officially announced that yet, that Io Shirai and Kaylee Ray will be teaming in the Women's Dusty Classic. But it certainly looked that way to me from watching the show last night, which is fine. I mean, Io and Kaylee Ray have teamed before. They're a great team. I don't see them winning the whole thing. Kaylee Ray is obviously just a placeholder for Saray, or not Saray. What's her name? Zoe Stark. Saray would have been cool too. And it's not like, oh, just put all the Asian women together. It's not one of those things. I just feel like they'd have great chemistry. Saray's back now. She's got like the revamped character. That would have been cool. Asuka, I was thinking the same thing, because they kind of made it out to be a big deal earlier on in the show when Asuka was like, oh, I have an idea. And they clearly did that to build at the end of the show with her coming to the aid of Kaylee Ray. So I guess that's fine. Asuka would have been cool, though. You think about people, and I got another question. Let's go to the next question here while I'm answering this one. Because that Jeremy 8911 asked, what wrestlers not doing much would you like to see sent down to NXT 2.0? Asuka. I may have said this a couple of years ago, but I feel like, yeah, she was already the NXT Women's Champion. She's the longest reigning NXT Women's Champion of all time in a singular reign. But she hasn't been down there in almost 5 years. There's a whole wealth of talent for her to work with. I just feel like even when she does come back on Raw and SmackDown, she'll probably be in the chamber. She's not going to win, nor should she win anyway. I mean, we've already seen her work with Rhea Ripley. Her and Becky we've already seen work together. Her and Bianca's a fresh match. But other than that, though, what more do you really have her to do? What more do you really have Asuka doing on the main roster that's overly important or exciting on either brand, even on SmackDown? Her and Shotzi would have been new, I guess, but Shotzi's not exactly fresh. Not fresh, but not exactly being booked to do anything of importance right now. But, Charlotte, we've seen that a million times. I'd rather see Charlotte, or rather Asuka. Keep Charlotte far away from NXT, please. We already saw that a couple of years ago. It didn't exactly work out. Put Asuka back in NXT for a little while. Her and Io would be great. I don't give a shit about Zoe Stark anyway. I just never really... She's a good wrestler, but as a character, she's just very boring to me, and I don't know. I just don't care about Zoe Stark at all. I feel like Asuka and Io would be a great tag team. Maybe Asuka or Io turns on the other one, and they feud from that point forward. That's a feud I can get into. That wouldn't be over a championship. Would that fit into NXT 2.0? Probably not, but still, I think it'd be cool. So I think Asuka and NXT would be awesome. To answer the rest of Jeremy's question here about other wrestlers not doing much who could benefit from a stint in NXT 2.0, I know we saw Ziggler on the show last night. Ziggler, I just don't give two fucks about at all anymore, but, him in NXT is at least something different because we haven't seen it before. I think he may have had one match in NXT TV like fucking 8 years ago. I distinctly remember him having like one match. I think he faced Rusev, didn't he? Didn't he have a match with Rusev on NXT TV like back in 2013? It was like one match. It was right after he lost the World Heavyweight Championship too. So this was like the peak of his popularity career in WWE. And this was almost a decade ago. But him being back, cool. If he helps put over the younger guys like a Breaker or a Ciampa. Ciampa's not that much younger than Ziggler, but, I'd be okay with that. I'm fine with that. Rude being back in NXT, not with Ziggler as a tag team, but like Rude another guy that hasn't been there in almost 5 years, but he had a great reign initially there, a great run as that evil heel. He's a heel currently in the main roster, but the dirty dog shit is just fucking dumb. I'd rather have Rude be back on his own doing the stuff as the glorious one that he was before he left for the main roster. That was like peak Rude in WWE, was the NXT stuff that he was doing. So Rude, I've thought of other names before. Apollo Crews would be cool. If he ditches the whole, he really got a nice push as the Nigerian prince or whatever the character that he's going with now. I just think the accent is dumb. But like, this is the guy that won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, had a very forgettable reign, and they've done absolutely nothing with the guy since. It's reached the point where him on Raw, I just don't give a shit about him at all. I just don't care whatsoever. So him being back in NXT since he wasn't there for a long time anyway would be cool. Apollo Crews, Rude, Dominic Dijakovic. Ditch the T-bar shit. Go back to NXT as Dominic Dijakovic, please. He should have been called up as Dominic years ago, but he got called up as part of the Retribution bullshit, and then they just changed his name and the look and the music and everything. Just put him back in NXT as Dominic, please, as Dominic Dijakovic. Maybe they feel like they would have too many Dominics on the show if Dominic Mysterio was on Raw. Who fucking knows? Cesaro would be awesome. Cesaro had a great mini run in NXT back in 2013, 2014, and the stuff with Sami Zayn. Cesaro being back in NXT would be fucking great. It's not like they have him doing anything of importance on the main roster anyway. So Cesaro, Ricochet, they have completely fumbled that guy in the main roster over the last 3 years. It's been long enough where him being back in NXT for, a couple of months or 6 months or whatever would be cool. It would feel fresh. I would say Ali before he asked for his release, and I don't blame him for that. But he would have been fine there because he never really had a real run in NXT. He was more so a part of 205 Live and not NXT proper. He had a couple of matches on the show, but never like a full-on run. AJ Styles would have been cool too, but I feel like he's too big of a star to be in NXT full-time because he never really had a full run in NXT. So those are a few names. Balor's not doing shit right now, but he was already in NXT for a few years recently, so I wouldn't go back to that. I don't know. Riddle is doing great work, so I wouldn't say him. I don't know. Probably any of the people I mentioned. Cesaro, Ricochet, Dominic Dijakovic, Rude, Asuka, any one of those people I think would really benefit from a run in NXT 2.0, and some of the younger guys and girls would benefit from working with those aforementioned people as well. Jeremy's second question, do you think Chad Gable should get a big singles push sometime this year? The key word there is, should he? Yes. The answer is, will he? No. Absolutely not. I feel like if they were going to give Gable a big singles push, they would have done it already. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about Kofi, and then he became world champion 11 years later. But the thing with Kofi is that they actually tried as a single star with him before, and they never really went all the way with it. Gable has literally been a tag team player for the almost full 6 years he's been on the main roster. That Shorty G shit was terrible. And the only time they ever really tried with him on his own was during the King of the Ring in 2019. He got a lot of fanfare from that. He got over because of that. And then just nothing. Nothing after that. So, I don't know. With Gable, I feel like, not that the time has passed because he's so entertaining right now. He's one of the best parts of Raw at the moment. The whole Alpha Academy thing and the whole zhuzh and the, oh, thank you. That whole thing just gets me dying every time. That thing kills me every time he fucking does it. It's hilarious. And these Quiz Bowl, segments and the spelling bee shit should be stupid, like the musical chairs bit from almost 20 years ago. But I find it funny. I think it's funny. So, and he's great. He's an absolute gem. He can take things that should be stupid and make them just comedy gold, a la Kurt Angle. He reminds me so much of Kurt Angle. And in the ring, too. The guy's amazing. So he should get a big singles push. Will they? Probably not. They'll probably drop the tag titles and they'll go back to barely being on the show because that's how WWE works. But it would be cool if they saw this as an opportunity as like, oh, wow, he actually really is entertaining. Let's push this guy. Let's actually do something with him. But I feel like they'll either go back to being an afterthought on Raw when they drop the tag team titles at some point, or he'll just manage Otis and try to get Otis to be a big singles force, because I feel like they're higher on Otis and protect Otis more than Gable. But Gable's great, so I wish they would push the guy, because the guy has a singles push written all over him, and it's long overdue. The guy is just an absolute treasure. At Thomas underscore B96, that is, his question was, if Conrad, Thompson, and Jeff Jarrod owned a wrestling promotion, how invested in it would you be? I mean, there's a lot of factors. Who else would be involved? What would the talent look like? I know they tease it a lot on their podcast. I like Conrad. I like Jeff. I just feel like, not that there's no room for another promotion, because there's a lot of free agents right now in wrestling. There's certainly a talent pool. There's certainly a wealth of talent for another promotion, maybe. I don't really care. I don't know. I just feel like Jeff Jarrett tried for a little bit, and Conrad wasn't involved, but Jeff tried the whole GFW thing like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it just went nowhere. No one gave a shit. It wasn't well managed. It was like TNA Light, and TNA Light was like WWE Light for a while, so that's not a good place to be in. Not now, but years ago when he first started in the GFW thing. And then it failed, and they had to merge with Impact because it just wasn't working. See, I don't have a lot of faith in that at all. I think they should probably just stick to the podcast. Maybe I'm wrong, and they end up growing something really cool and really amazing, but I don't have a lot of faith in. I know he helped. He contributed to the birth of TNA. He was the owner of TNA, the founder, whatever. But the whole GFW thing was so awful and just went nowhere that I just don't have a lot of faith that him starting up his own promotion to this point would be an overly great idea. Again, stick to the podcasting stuff. Maybe get involved with other promotions, work behind the scenes elsewhere like WWE or GCW. I know Jarrett was there for a little while doing his thing as a wrestler, which was interesting. But yeah, another promotion owned by them specifically, there's so much other wrestling out there that I just probably wouldn't care. I mean, I watch almost everything except for New Japan. I don't even have the time to watch another promotion. So yeah, I'm all set. At the Wrestle Guy, Sal's got 2 questions here as we close out. First one being, I noticed this on an advertisement leading up to Elimination Chamber, a giant green chamber. What is your reaction if this becomes a reality? I normally wouldn't question it, but I've seen a red Hell in the Cell, so I'm not doubting it either. Whatever. I think it's stupid if they make the Elimination Chamber green. That's probably something, like the red Hell in the Cell. It's goofy. The green chamber is probably worse. It's not like it's pink or something like that where it just looks completely ridiculous. I don't know. A green chamber just because it's in Saudi, fine, I guess, whatever. It's not really going to bother me. I mean, I would prefer the old chamber. I mean, not even the old chamber, like the newer version of the chamber where the wrestlers don't have to hurt themselves as much. I honestly don't really mind it. I think it looks cool. It's not as, it doesn't create as much pain for the performers. It's like, oh man, it looks a lot more intimidating. Yeah, but the performers aren't going to fucking kill themselves by being in it, so. And if they can do more matches and make their careers longer and have more longevity because of it, then I'm all for it. So I actually like the newer chamber. The green chamber I'm not super high on, but you know what? As long as the matches are good and the show is good, as long as it's not like some ridiculous rainbow-looking color, then a green chamber, which is my favorite color anyway, doesn't overly bother me. His second question, though, why in the last few years has WWE built WrestleMania matches so last minute aside from a few matches? I remember we used to have an idea of the card even as early as the Royal Rumble. It seems like now we're building some matches even as early as a week before WrestleMania. What are your thoughts? I've noticed the same thing. I talked about this earlier. I think I talked about this a week or two ago. It's sad. It's embarrassing. They have such a wealth of talent, and they've really cut down on that talent in recent years to where you would think they would have a better idea of what they're doing for Mania. I mean, the fact that coming out of the fucking Rumble, they didn't know what the WWE title match was going to be, and they've probably have just decided on doing, hey, fuck it, let's just make it winner take all because we don't know what we're doing with this championship anyway, is just pathetic. So, yeah, but you're right, though. They've been doing this for years, at least in recent years. I mean, last year for sure. I know they had Fastlane. I know they were doing that as a Peacock thing. I guess they kind of had to do a pay-per-view right like 3 weeks before Mania because they had to work out the kinks with Peacock because they had just arrived on the platform. Thank God they're not doing that this year. No Fastlane, thank the Lord. But that led to a lot of matches being rushed for Mania, which was just terrible. It happened 2 years ago, but that was because of COVID. So I kind of give them an excuse as far as that goes, and I give them a break in that circumstance. 35, I don't really remember the build a whole lot. I feel like they had a better idea of what the top matches would be. But honestly, though, even Bryan and Kofi, it's not like they were planning that out as far as the Rumble. That kind of came together a month or two before the show at Elimination Chamber. You can't tell me they were planning on doing Kofi and Bryan at WrestleMania. Were they going to do Bryan and Ali instead? That was never confirmed. I don't know. That was never made official. And the fact they didn't know what the WWE title match would be even 3 years ago, and it's even far worse now, it's terrible. So as far as the reasoning for it, why is it? The guy that runs this company and runs the creative is 77 years old? I mean, the guy could barely remember, I'm sure, what he eats for breakfast, let alone what they're planning for WrestleMania. I'm sure they have other people in the company that are like, hey, let's do this. And then Vince changes his mind every other day that they have to scrap plans and they go with something else and they go in a different direction and blah, blah, blah. How many times have we seen shit teased and then they don't deliver on it? It's not like it's a red herring. It's because they're actually going in that direction and then they change plans at the last second. It happens so often. And yeah, there is something to be said about not having a predictable build to WrestleMania, but you have to have some matches set up. I mean, at least the main matches, you know what I mean? And if you don't know what you're going to do, and then the card feels thrown together for your biggest show of the year, let alone for any other pay-per-view. I mean, for every other pay-per-view, it happens a lot. I think it's stupid there. But for the biggest show of the year, you would think they would have a better idea of what they're doing. And it's not like injuries have I mean, SmackDown has had some injuries lately with Banks and Drew and stuff like that, but they're back now. So it's not like they've had injuries to Roman and Rollins and Brock and Bobby to the point where they have to change plans. I mean, it seems like the biggest thing they had to kind of change plans with was Shane. I mean, Shane being gone from the company, they have to find a replacement for him. Why is that? Why can't you rely on someone from your actual active roster? I mean, it is amazing how lazy they are getting with the build to Mania. Like I said earlier, but this isn't an excuse though. The build doesn't always translate to the Mania itself. We've had some awful Mania builds, but some really good WrestleManias and some great Mania builds and some really forgettable or bad WrestleManias. But that's not to say, oh, the build doesn't matter. The build absolutely matters. It gets you excited for the show and makes the matches more meaningful. That's not to say, oh, the build doesn't matter, so just go on and have a great show. I'm not saying I'm just saying it's not impossible to have a great show with a bad build. But they really should have a strong build. Ideally, it should be a great build and a great payoff and great execution. But this is WWE in 2022. I'm not expecting it. That's not to give them an excuse. I'm just of the mindset now that's how it is. And it really should be different. I mean, but we should also be raking them over the coals over that as well, because it is inexcusable how thrown together a lot of these feuds and matches feel and will feel come WrestleMania, because they have no set plan and the show's in 2 fucking months. Again, no excuse for that aside from just pure laziness on WWE's part. Specifically Vince, very likely. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 428 of #AskGSM here today for February 9th, 2022. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to send in a question to the show by tweeting me on Twitter at WrestleRant with #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be sure to check out my interview with Bobby Lashley, the WWE Champion, for Monday here on the channel in video form, and my chat with Tennille Dashwood from Impact, also in video form, from last Friday here on the channel. Again, guys, have a great one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.